Okay, let's talk about characters. Movie characters are indeed movie characters, and they're not real people. That's a shocking revelation. But we spend so much time as directors and as writers and as actors searching for realism and something that the audience can relate to. But in fact, the characters in movies are more heightened. No one is as witty as Chandler Bing, because no one has a team of 12 comedy writers that are crafting their speech from day to day. Wouldn't that be nice? But sadly, not true. Even a naturally funny person is not going to have nearly the number of one-liners that he has. No one in politics talks as fast as the characters on The West Wing. I'm talking pretty fast right now, but it's nowhere nearly as quickly as Allison Janney or Bradley Whitford were talking on that show. It was the urgency that made their show so watchable. They are TV characters for a reason. A person in a movie or a TV show can be relatable, and often should be relatable, but they should not be mundane. When you think of the characters on The Office, you definitely think, well, they're mundane characters, but they're watchable because they behave in such a hilarious way, and they have circumstances that they face on that show that are heightened. Because, of course, they're heightened for comedic purposes, for dramatic purposes, and after all, no one would watch a live, unedited cam footage of a real office. A lot of people work in offices and they claim, oh, I wish there were camera here, it would be so entertaining. Well, not really, not unless you were edited. Maybe if you were edited, you'd be entertaining. So let's talk about a personality quiz I always take when I create a character for a project I'm working on. Here are some of the key questions that I ask myself when I'm crafting a character, and I use this worksheet every time I develop a character. These are 10 simple questions. If you wanted to go a lot deeper with a character, you could take an online personality test. You could fill out a romance character profile, like open up an eHarmony profile or a Match.com profile for your lead character, and you will learn a lot about them. But that is an awful lot, and let's streamline it to 10 questions that at least get the groundwork laid for a new character. So, what age range do you see this character in? And I usually like to keep it within 10 years, so there's a little wiggle room. But in general, what age range is your character? And using your worksheet, you can actually fill this out as you develop a character. What is their family background? What was the parental setup? How many siblings did they have, if any at all? Studying their childhood and examining what they might be. Even if you're writing an older character now, everybody started off somewhere. And those are the formative years. Third question, what triggers this character? What sets them off? Everyone has a fuse. Some people's fuses are long, some are short. What sets off this character? How does this character treat waitstaff in a restaurant? Now, why would I put that in here? Obviously, your story may not even involve ordering in a restaurant. But they always say when you're dating somebody, you want to look and see how they treat the waitstaff in a restaurant. So it's a good question to ask yourself. What religion was this character in childhood, and how has that changed as they've gotten older? Question number 6, is this character a leader or a follower? That will tell you a lot. When are they their most charming self? When is your character at their most charming, their most desirable, their most appealing? What is their biggest fear in life? What threatens them the most? And obviously so many stories are all about overcoming your fear. I would say probably almost every story ever told was about somebody overcoming a fear. So what is their biggest fear in life? What do they feel most threatened by? It could be the world at large. It could be their neighborhood. It could be their boss. It could be their spouse. It could be failure to succeed. There's so many ways to interpret that question. How would your character answer this question? What are people good for? It's such a profoundly rich question that it's worth asking yourself. And then, who are the special people in this character's life? And why are they the special people in their life? Hopefully your character has someone in their life they consider special, unless they're a complete loner. And the way we do this, the way we break out this personality, is we look at 4 main areas of life that add dimension, multi-dimension to your character. First, their physiology. This is important because it's the original vision for your character. It's how they look. It is their age, their gender, their height, the posture, the way they appear to others, their defects, their heredity, their sexual orientation. These are the things that obviously can change with casting. So if you're not directing and casting your own movie, if you're the writer, then you don't have a lot of say because they're going to cast who they want to cast. If you're the actor, obviously the package that you bring to the table in this role, I mean, that is the physiology of this character. But that doesn't mean that you can't tweak certain things. You know, you might walk with a limp. You might have a speech impediment. So you are crafting the physiology of the character. And then we look at number 2, the sociology. This is how they live. What class are they in society? As crude of a question that is. What is their race, their nationality? What is their country of origin? What's their occupation? What's their attitude towards work? Do they love their job? Do they hate it? Are they fulfilled? What about their educational background? What was their home life as a child, and now what is it as an adult? What kind of home and home life have they created for themselves? How have they developed mentally as an adult? Would you consider this character a leader or a follower in their community? And then on to the psychology of a character. This is how they behave. What are their moral standards or their personal passions and ambition? What is the temperament of your character? What would a psychologist observe if they were sitting down for a session? Do they have an imagination? Do they have good judgment? Do they have good taste? These are just some of the examples of the psychology of your character. And lastly, let's not forget about the spirituality of their character. What do they believe in? What is their religion, if any at all? Do they believe in God? How do they feel about church people? Are they searching for something, or do they feel that they've been found? Are they satisfied, or are they hungry for more? Those are some spiritual questions to ask. So now enough of me talking. Let's watch a 3-minute scene. This is a self-contained scene in a project I did called The Chief Prosecutor. Now, this is a courtroom scene, so it's a little obvious as to what the characters want and kind of who they are, because of course in courtroom scenes, like in therapy scenes, people often say a lot of details. But in a short 3-minute scene, let's say an actor were to receive this, and let's say they sat down with these 10 questions, the personality questions that we looked at a few minutes ago. What could they infer from the script? What did I try to put in that script that gave them clues as to building this character, as to how to create this world? So watch this 3 minutes and then we'll discuss. You can fill out your form if you're playing along at home. You can fill out your form and you can either choose to write a personality quiz for the judge, for the defense, or for the prosecutor. While we're watching this, I'm going to fill out my forms here for the defense.
And you work in radiation oncology?
I do.
Is that full-time?
What do you mean full-time?
Like 40 hours a week or some such?
Oh, I wish I worked 40 hours a week. My family wishes it too.
The question is still out there.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Sustained. The witness has answered the question. Please move on to your next question.
Judge, respectfully, I just need to get a clear definition of what full-time means
Asked
to...
and answered. The defense objection was sustained. How can I make myself clearer?
I understand, Your Honor.
If you understand, then you will continue with your next question. Everyone in this courtroom is older than when we first entered it.
You don't know your hours. They're unknowable. There seems to be a lot about your job that's untrackable and random.
Objection.
What are you trying to do? This is a courtroom, not your Twitter feed. You will keep your commentary to yourself, or we'll recess, and you can meet me in my chambers.
You, of course, as a doctor, are clear with your patients that some radiation injury is to be expected and may be temporary.
I never made such a statement.
I didn't ask if you made the statement. I'm asking you a question.
No, you put words in my mouth.
Judge, will the court please instruct the defendant to answer the question?
There is no question.
A cross-examination is, in essence, putting words in your mouth, which you can accept or reject.
I reject.
You treated my client's tongue cancer with high-energy radiation therapy.
Very good. Now you're speaking truthfully.
And by targeting radiation doses in such a small area of the body, your goal was to damage the DNA of the cancer cells, preventing future growth.
Very good.
You sound glib.
Likewise.
Maybe you've never experienced pain or suffering,
Objection.
and if that's true,
When I was about 7 years old, I was sitting in my mother's lap. She had her arms wrapped around me, and she was reading my favorite book, The Little Engine That Could. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. She read it so well, you could hear the engine of that train, and it was perfect and rhythmic. And I only stayed awake till page 4 because she had put me to sleep, and I relaxed. And when I woke up, the book was still laying there beside me. And I picked it up, and I finished reading it. I wanted to impress her and show her how much I had listened. And I was, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And then she didn't respond. And I turned around and gave her a big hug and said, "Mommy!" I thought I'd wake her up. She slowly fell to the floor. I could hear her head hit the floor. She'd been dead over an hour. I didn't understand that then, but she was a Jehovah's Witness. They never took medication, never told anybody about her diagnosis. So at the age of 7, I think I understood pain and suffering pretty well.
Okay, so having filled this out, the age range for this person. When I wrote this scene, I did not write an age range because a doctor could be a wide variety of ages. And so it ended up being an actor sort of in the 65 to 75 age range. So that would be that. You don't always know this, though. Sometimes you write a character and you don't know exactly where they're going to be. Kind of sometimes depends on casting if you plan to make the project yourself. What is their family background? Again, I'm talking about the defense, the woman who is the doctor being interrogated. I wrote, she had 2 overachieving parents. She had no siblings. And then, of course, we learn in the script that her mom died. So her mom was an overachiever, but died when this character was a very young age. What triggers the character, sets them off? Well, it's pretty obvious that being questioned triggers this character, being second-guessed. She uses sarcasm to deflect these kinds of things, and that all would have been obvious to the actor when Nancy Freeman sat down for the scene. This character gets triggered when people don't respect her degrees, her experience. So that's just more I added in filling this out as far as like who this person is. Then the question, how does this character treat the waitstaff? Well, I felt that if they don't refer to her as ma'am, she only leaves a 5% tip. Now again, this is not in the script, but this is building the inner life in learning more about the character. This is for both the actor to do when they receive a script, and this is for me originally as the writer to do before I even write this courtroom scene. I want to know more about these people before I sit down to write them. And that's where this personality quiz really comes in handy. What religion was this character in childhood, and how has that changed? Well, it's kind of helpful that she said that her mom was Jehovah's Witness, so that would imply that so was she. But I added more. I said, I think she studied Buddhism in college, but she felt it was a wishy-washy faith. And in the end, right now, atheism is the only thing that makes sense to her. So I would consider her a non-religious character. Is she a leader or a follower? I said she's a leader. She always has to have the last word. And that is pretty clear in how testy she is with the prosecutor who's just doing his job. But she clearly, as a doctor, is not somebody who likes to be questioned in this way. Then the question, when is she her most charming self? And that's a little trickier because she's not too charming in this scene. The character is rough around the edges. Well, I said she's her most charming self when she's in Tahiti. I think when she's drinking rum with her friends. And I think she gets even more sarcastic than normal when she's on vacation with her friends, and I think that's when she's her most charming. So, again, rounding out the character, giving them more sides. So if you saw her out of the courtroom, you might see a fun side to her when she's on vacation. What is her biggest fear in life, and what threatens her the most? I said her biggest fear here is not being remembered when she dies. Isn't that a lot of people's biggest fear? I think that for over 60 years, the memory of her mom has faded. And I think that she is afraid that, or she's keenly aware, that she will also be forgotten as the decades pass by. How would your character answer this? What are people good for? I think this woman would say, without people, there would be no paycheck. And yes, I know that's cold. But I think that's the kind of outlook she has on humanity. Without people, there would be no paycheck. Who are the special people in this character's life and why? We don't want to just make her one-sided where she's just icy, an icy cold doctor. We want to know that she's got more going on in her life. And so I said, I think her best friends, Sandy and Joseph, it's a married couple that she's friends with. I think they remind her to include some time for fun and for travel. So I think she goes on vacation sometimes with Sandy and Joseph and maybe a few other friends when she really cuts loose. And those are the special people, the special characters that are in her life. So that is an example of the benefits of taking that personality quiz when crafting a character. And now my last notes here are really about, these are really for writers who are crafting a character, but if you're an actor or a director watching this, this might be beneficial to you too. I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly because you've got it on your sheet. You want to try to keep your main characters to between 7 and 8, especially when you're creating a TV show. Obviously, most sitcoms that aren't The Simpsons, they max out at 7 characters. When you think of Cheers or Friends or The Big Bang Theory, that's just kind of the magic number, like the maximum number of characters that the audience can wrap their minds around in an ensemble situation. Obviously, if we're writing a feature film, there's going to be a lot of supporting characters that come and go and all that. And remember that contradictory traits can exist within a character. Spotlight them both. Show the good and the bad. The most likable character can do unlikable things, but we don't want to lose the audience's sympathy. So let a character be unlikable, but remember you need to bring them around. You need to show them other sides, because we've all watched some of these shows, some of anti-hero shows on different streaming platforms, and we've seen, sometimes you're like 3 episodes in and you go, I'm out. I just don't think I care about this person. It's like there's not enough there. They're just kind of a jerk. Ask yourself, what are my character's moral choices? And am I making moral choices for my character, or am I letting them do it the way humans would do? So sometimes, the writer, you're following the story. You're sort of observing what your character is going through, and you're just sort of there letting it unfold as it goes. Audiences hate bitterness and self-pity. So don't let an audience see a sympathetic person wallow in self-pity for too long. I had to be careful with this in Belleville. We've talked about this in previous classes. Willie had to start growing throughout the film. He started off as a real loner, clearly drank too much, was hostile towards a friendly person showing up in his farm, hostile towards his neighbor. So over time, he really had to just start to develop some sympathy with the audience. We needed the audience to empathize with him and with the situation losing his wife. Without growth, there is no conflict. Without conflict, a character cannot grow. Just remember that. I'm not the first to have said that. Once again, I'll repeat that. Without growth, there is no conflict. And without conflict, your character cannot grow. The prosecutor in the scene, let's get back to the scene that we were looking at before, went from sarcasm and standoffishness, and then eventually
Slowly fell to the floor.
vulnerability.
I could hear her head hit the floor.
You can't hear that story about her mother's tragic death in her arms without starting to have great empathy for why she became the way she became. A good lead character becomes self-sufficient, and they start to outgrow the various roles in their life. We live multiple lives in one lifetime. You start off as a child, and then you try to survive your teenage years, and then you start to make mistakes in your young adulthood, and then you go on to your career, or maybe become a parent, and then eventually retirement, and if you're lucky, old age. So your character's probably struggling to outgrow a particular role in their life. That's probably where you're getting the conflict in your movie, because your character is stuck, or your character is being threatened by an outside force, or is starting to go on a new journey. So usually they're sort of stuck in a particular role in their life, and they need to move forward. So actors, if you're an actor watching this, you must believe in the argument of your character. Even if it's a serial killer, you have to find a way. Writers have to do this, and then eventually actors have to do this. You have to find a way to believe in your character's reason for murdering. Hopefully it's difficult for you to relate to that, I hope. But Aaron Sorkin didn't have to agree with Jack Nicholson's character on The Stand and A Few Good Men in order to write him, but he did have to believe that Nicholson's character believed it, and why he believed what he believed. So that's important for us as writers. When we're writing a character, especially an antagonist or an anti-hero, we need to relate in some way to why they fully believe what they believe. And I've often heard actors talk about the same thing. Like, even if they're playing the lowest form of character, they have to find some reason to understand why they see the world the way they see it, why they take the actions that they choose to take, and what their general worldview is, and believe it in some way in order to bring the character to life. Lastly, writers, I want you to remember to introduce characters in the first half of the movie. Don't bring in too many characters just because they're convenient and they fulfill a plot point. I mean, obviously you're going to do that sometimes. A police officer is going to show up because you need them to. But in general, be careful not to bring in so many characters just because they're convenient for your plot. And definitely avoid bringing in new characters in the third act of a screenplay, because by that time you should have introduced everybody. Once that climax has happened and you're wrapping things up in the third act, we're done introducing new characters. And lastly, when you're first introducing a character, and this goes for actors and writers and directors, frankly, try to introduce a new character by showing the audience what they want, who their enemy is, what their obstacle is. The more you can show us through action and through behavior, and the less you have to tell us through dialogue, the better. Actors, if you're improvising, try to show the audience who your character is and not just have them say everything in an obvious way. That's bad dialogue. That's bad writing. And writers, that goes without saying that you should not be telling us everything we need to know. You need to bury that stuff throughout the project, and you need to show it. Whenever you can have a prop in your hand, or the character can behave in a certain way, or show something on their face, and you don't need to have them say it, spell it out in dialogue, the better your project will be.